Tonight on Independent Sources, Haiti. 1 year after the devastating earthquake, millions in aid pledged to the country. But is that enough to raise the first Black republic out of ruin?
And African leaders try to broker peace as a battle for the presidency of Cote d'Ivoire continues.
Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Viano Ravinka.
And I'm Gary Pierre-Pierre. It's been a year to the day that a 7.0 earthquake shook Haiti to its foundations. The Haitian government estimates that over 200,000 people died as a result of the quake and left an estimated 2 million people homeless.
Since the disaster, the international community has dispersed $1.28 billion in aid to the country, out of the approximately $2 billion pledged, according to some reports. Those are just figures. The real story about Haiti can be seen on streets, where buildings still lay in ruin, and in the stories of amputees, cholera patients, and rape victims housed in a tarpaulin city.
As the conversation has shifted between the country's various plights, the overarching theme has been that of recovery. There are some who argue that all this aid is hurting rather than helping Haiti. So is that the case? And if so, what can be done to help rebuild the country? I sat down with NYU professor Fabienne Doucet and political consultant Jocelyn McCalla to talk about the hope for Haiti. A year ago today, an earthquake flattened Port-au-Prince, destroyed a lot of other cities in Haiti. The international community, people in the United States, responded rather quickly and massively with billions of dollars raised. A year later, where are we, Fabienne?
I'm afraid we're not as far as we should be, not as far as I hope that we would be. And I become increasingly frustrated to see how slowly progress is happening.
Did you expect fast progress?
I didn't expect for things to be rebuilt immediately or for a miracle to happen. But I think that what's been the most frustrating thing for me has been what seems to be a lack of will on the part of the people who have power to make changes, to actually make decisions. I think that there's been a lot of fear or politicizing going on to prevent people from making decisions that are going to save lives.
Johnny, the Haitian government found itself last year in a situation to rise above itself, if you will, to do what was unexpected of itself. Was that too much to expect from the Haitian government?
Well, I think the earthquake could have been an opportunity for people to wake up to the reality of Haiti and say that this is an opportunity that challenges us to do much better than we have done. So instead of incremental changes, let's look at the big picture and try to some extent, follow what everybody has said, that we're going to rebuild Haiti, but we're going to rebuild Haiti back better. The government of Haiti, unfortunately, did not rise to the occasion, primarily because the easiest thing for people to do is to go back to the routine business of how they do business. And unfortunately, in Haiti, that has been the case. Primarily, I thought that, I visited Haiti about a month after the earthquake, exactly a month after the earthquake, in February of 2010. And the one thing that struck me very quickly was how normal the situation had become.
Isn't that people had accepted living in these ruins?
Correctly. In other words, it's not as if to say that people are accepted to live in the ruins. It's to say that people did not really expect the government, to do anything else for them. So therefore, they made do with what they had. So right after the earthquake, before the international agencies moved in with tarps and tents, people just used drapes. Clothing, to create makeshift shelters. In fact, to some extent, they were far more pragmatic than many of the agencies that came in to the rescue afterwards. I think so the government did not rise to the occasion, but I think that people did expect that this is a situation in which immediately afterwards, there was this huge outpouring of togetherness, brotherhood, people reaching out to each other and saying, we are all in the same boat, and therefore we are going to get out of this together. And I think this was tremendous, and this is the kind of sentiment that the world noticed, and which in fact led to the world responding very generously to Haiti. So as you mentioned earlier, millions were raised by international agencies, billions were pledged by governments all around the world, but then it seems that everything fell flat.
Right.
Well, what happened, Fabienne? You've worked in Haiti, you visited the country about 5 or 6 times since the earthquake. What needs to be done? I mean, right now, a year later, we're still not where we want to be, but what do you need to see to say, okay, there's progress here?
Well, I think that for me, the biggest thing is that people who have the purse strings and people who have the power to make decisions need to relinquish some of their strongholds. So for instance, one of the big things that needs to happen is that we need to reconfigure this issue of land rights, because people keep talking about rebuilding, and I've seen, so many plans come across my email and requests for support of this architectural project and that architectural project. And at this point, I'm like, I can't support anything. I mean, it's a beautiful drawing, and that's a great plan, but where are you going to put it? And who's going to allow you to put it there? So this is one of the hugest issues. But what is standing in the way of that being resolved is this debate over, what the land right records are. And to me, it seems that there are some simple solutions that need to be taken. Those solutions may not make everyone happy, but it's not about making everyone happy, right? It's about protecting the vulnerable, women, children, and people who are sick and elderly. That's really what it's about. So I'm sort of like, get over yourselves, get over your land rights, and the government needs to make some decisions, some difficult decisions, perhaps frustrating some people, and saying, we're taking eminent domain, we're purchasing this land, here's your money, thank you very much, now move on. And now we need to take our role. But it seems to me that one of the characteristics of this government, and I guess the Haitian state in general, is that there are so many factions, and there is a lot of fear. And I think that people are afraid to step on each other's toes, and so they aren't willing to say, I'm making this call, I'm making this very difficult decision, I'm willing to be the bad guy, I'm willing to make everybody angry with me, and by that I'm talking about the people who have a lot of money and power who are not in government, willing to make those people angry on behalf of the vulnerable.
Well, right now, I think the population is pretty angry at René Préval. So,
oh, yeah.
The thinking of many of the ministers, a lot of the functionaries in government in Haiti. I mean, is what Fabienne talking about pie in the sky, or is this going to happen? Is someone going to rise to the occasion and take the hard decisions that are necessary?
Well, it's unlikely to happen in the short term. I mean, as you probably know, Préval terms of office is about to end, and in fact there's a conversation about whether or not he should go on February 7th, which is about 3 weeks away, or should he go sometime in May. And as you rightly note, tension has been rising in Haiti. People are angry. People were eager to see change, and to some extent, they're looking at it and says, well, the sooner he leaves office, the better it would be for Haiti. Now, this might be debatable, but the fact is that we can't expect that a government led by René Préval is going to take today very decisive decisions at this point. So
it's a lame duck.
It's a lame duck.
Right.
But more importantly, I think one of the things that people should note is that, frankly, there is no state in Haiti. I mean, we can talk about a fragile state, but Préval, 3 weeks after the earthquake, was famous for one quote, and that quote was, "My palace has collapsed." What he should have said is that my state has collapsed. unfortunately, he didn't say that, and obviously people thought that, well, he was out of touch with reality by saying that my palace collapsed. But let's go back to the issue of the state collapse. If there is no state institution, then there are very few mechanisms to trigger the kind of change that needs to take place. Recognizing that, last year, the international community and the government of Haiti said, well, let's have a transition. Let's have an independent authority, which is a commission to rebuild Haiti, and have that commission take the kind of forceful measures that would be necessary to kickstart the recovery in Haiti. That does not happen because, in fact, it fell victim to the politics of Haiti and the politics of the international community, and in a way, part of the reason why there is nothing that's going on in Haiti at this point, or very little that is going on in Haiti, is because neither the Haitians nor the international allies of Haiti have really taken the time to do anything but patch up here and there.
I mean, again, Fabienne, you mentioned earlier that you've seen a lot of plans. Are these plans just things that were drawn hastily, or are these serious
No, these
plans?
are very serious plans. As a matter of fact, there was a competition for a housing expo that was supposed to take place. I think it was scheduled for
it was never held.
December, and it was never, or maybe November.
Initially scheduled for October, then postponed to December, and then essentially canceled.
And so I know of very serious, very skilled architects who put in their heart and soul to putting something together, and it never came to fruition. And so examples like this are, I think, what lead people to feel like they just want to turn their back or give up because they put in so much of their time and their effort, and then they present themselves and nobody's paying attention, nobody wants to hear about it, or things get canceled, or
we've talked a lot about the government, but what about the private sector? I mean, how active have they been in trying to lure private investment, private capital to develop this country? I mean, we've had a donors conference, but I'm still waiting for that investment conference. What happened with that?
Well, the corollary to a collapsed state or to a fragile state is that you have also a very weak private sector. And in a way, since Haiti depends for most of the revenues or most of the cash being spent in Haiti, either from bilateral or multilateral assistance, 80% of government budget comes from international donors. The private sector is really sort of a middleman in terms of exports and imports, and then perhaps in the respect to the small assembly industry that Haiti has, it allows for some people to be employed. But the fact is that there's been very little investment. So in a way, both the private sector and the government of Haiti are in a way relying on what I would call a welfare state. I mean, they have a welfare state mentality. So it's give me rather than let me take the bull by the horn and let me figure out how I'm going to develop a domestic market that is worthy of the name of a domestic market. Now, going back to, for example, this issue of rebuilding, but to me at this point, there should have been brand new villages that have been rising from the earth in Haiti. Not necessarily in Port-au-Prince, but outside of Port-au-Prince, because to some extent, I mean, as you probably know, it takes to go to a 15-minute meeting, it takes 2 to 3 hours just to go to that meeting.
Indeed.
And that means that transportation issues have to be solved, for this country or for the system to become efficient.
Well, I mean, 5 years from now, Fabienne, what do you envision? What do you see happening in Haiti? Based on what has happened last year, is it a pretty picture?
Based on what, I'm glad you qualified that. Based on what's happened, I would see, sort of minimal movement, perhaps a bit of progress, perhaps a bit of direction, movement in the right direction, but really minimal. Certainly not to the extent necessary, and that's. Unfortunately.
A friend of mine said that we're likely to see they will build a palace, they will build an iron market and a hospital, and then they'll leave us alone. Do you agree with this sort of cynical assessment?
Well, the iron market has been rebuilt. In fact, and I believe that today there will be an announcement that says, pompous and a very sort of celebratory announcement. It says market is now open for business. Lots and lots of buildings are going to have to be rebuilt. Whether the palace itself is going to be rebuilt within a year, I'm not sure. I think that part of what needs to happen is decisive, visionary leadership has to be put in charge. As long as that ingredient does not exist, we're going to have business as usual.
Unfortunately, we had to leave this conversation there. Fabienne Doucet, Jocelyn McCalla, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come on Independent Sources, staving off a possible civil war in Cote d'Ivoire.
Before that, Marlene Peralta with some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. A new study reveals a 3% increase in high school graduation rates nationwide. A Carib News editorial reports that 120,000 more high school students graduated in 2008 than in 2001. The improvement comes after a significant graduation rate increase among minority students in 29 states. The report by America's Promise Alliance also attributes the improvement to the closure of more than 200 dropout factories or schools that fail to graduate over 40% of their students. The Filipino Reporter has bad news for Filipinos who want to work in the United States. According to the report by the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, job opportunities in the U.S. and other Western countries are bleak this year due to the effects of the global financial crisis. On the other hand, the report gives a more positive forecast on employment opportunities in Canada, noting that Canadian employers have expressed a desire to hire Filipino workers on a permanent basis. From the forward, the international community is expected to strengthen the efforts to protect migrants in Egypt. This comes after increasing reports of abduction, abuse, and trafficking of Africans in Egyptian territory. However, some experts doubt Egyptian authorities will pay enough attention, since the country has been widely accused of failing to meet its obligations as the United Nations protocols dictates. El Diario La Prensa reports that a new kitchen incubator opened at La Marqueta of East Harlem. The incubator is a site within the vendors market that has the capacity to house up to 40 businesses and is equipped with modern machinery. The incubator will also provide professionals ready to train people of low-income backgrounds on how to become business owners. The site will be under the administration of the nonprofit organization Hot Bread Kitchen. And finally, from the Amsterdam News, 2011 is the year of people of African descent. The United Nations General Assembly announced the designation in 2009. This was in an effort to promote further improvement of the lives of people of African descent who, according to the UN, still continue to suffer the impact of the tragic transatlantic slave trade. The international celebration will coincide with the 10th Annual United Nations World Conference Against Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerance. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to Gary and Vianora in the studio.
Thanks, Marlene. A dispute over the presidency of Cote d'Ivoire has some in the international community concerned that the West African country may be plunged into civil war. The contention stems from the fact that the defeated president, Laurent Gbagbo, is unwilling to cede power to Alassane Ouattara, who won the general election back in November of last year.
Neighboring African leaders have pressed Mr. Gbagbo to relinquish his power to no avail. This has led at least one leader to suggest that Mr. Gbagbo be removed with military force. So far, any such move has been stayed. However, there are those who question whether diplomacy can work to resolve this issue.
This incident has also reignited the discussion about African leaders who virtually thumb their noses at the international community. I sat down with African Sun-Times publisher Chika Onyeani and political scientist Dr. Aristide Zolberg to talk about the growing tensions in Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire has a long history of political stability, of economic prosperity, and cultural vibrancy. Ari, can you talk more about the country and its significance on the world stage?
Well, I think it's had different kinds of significance at different times in its history. for a long time it was viewed as one of the more conservative African countries in the sense that they accepted French rule longer than let's say, Guinea, which is one of the neighbors. So Houphouët-Boigny had a policy in which he used his alliance with France to help control different groups within Côte d'Ivoire and to have a good market for Ivorian products.
So the country did well economically for many decades, Chika, and Ari mentioned Houphouët-Boigny as being one of the people who can be credited for the country's success for a number of years. And then with his demise, there were a lot of issues. You have coup d'etats. What went wrong, and how can this downfall be explained?
Well, you could have the way to describe Houphouët-Boigny is a benevolent dictator. That is how you could describe him, because he did good things for the people, and he welcomed everybody from Africa, no matter who you were, so far as you were competent. That was, in fact, that was what informed on his bringing in Ouattara as Prime Minister, and because he wanted people who were competent.
Well, since you mentioned Ouattara, let's talk about him. He is the current president-elect, and let's talk about the current political crisis. Was this crisis anticipated in any way, and could it have been prevented, Ari?
I think if you know some of the history, which we both have just tried to summarize a little bit, you could anticipate this kind of crisis. The crisis between Gbagbo, who won't leave power and who comes from the central western part of the country, which has always viewed itself as being left out of the goodies.
Could the crisis been prevented?
If the reigning dictator had accepted the result of the election, there wouldn't have been a crisis, but he wouldn't.
But Chika, we talked previous to the interview, and you mentioned that had the reactions of the Western African states been different, the crisis could have been averted. Is that correct?
Well, it's not that the crisis has happened immediately after the election. That is a different thing. The crisis, because Bédier's slogan during the election was that we win or we win. That was the slogan of the party, which means he anticipated winning the election. Gbagbo. And since he did not win, he found a way by getting the Constitutional Council to declare him the winner by also throwing out 500,000 votes of Ouattara's.
What do you make of the reactions from the West African states saying that they could intervene with military force?
Well, as we were discussing before, that would have been the best thing to do, because Nigeria had intervened in Liberia, had intervened in, in Sierra Leone, had intervened in Principe, had intervened in all those places, and we have a new president, of course. The presidents we had at that time were from a military background, and they could easily deploy the force. But we have a president, Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, who is a civilian, and there is, in fact, on Thursday, there is going to be a primary in Nigeria. He's in a tight race. So for him to say that, first of all, the first thing he said was, we're not going to use force. And second, and then later on, after the meeting of ECOWAS countries, then he said, we are going to use force.
So there were mixed signals from the West
there
African
are mixed signals. And then, of course, we discussed what Ghana just did on Thursday, which is for President Atta Mills to say that, oh, Ghana is not going to send and will not be able to send troops because the Ghana already has 500 troops serving in Ivory Coast with the United Nations.
Ari, you believe that war is very likely
Yes.
in Cote d'Ivoire?
I'm very pessimistic right now. I think because there are lots of weapons floating around, both within the country and next door in Liberia. And it's very easy for these weapons to start. I mean, if you have an old Bulgarian Kalashnikov, you can kill a lot of people and you can sort of go into business, which is what some of these loose soldiers do.
And you're talking about weapons coming from the previous civil war.
Yeah, there are a lot of stuff that's left over. They were never really collected.
And talk more about the porous border between Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia. You're saying that that poses a great danger to the country.
Absolutely.
How so?
Because Liberia had a very long civil war, and a civil war involving these going into business for themselves kinds of mercenaries, people who get a hold of weapons and then use them for blackmail. They kill you unless you pay off. And there's no reason for them, now that there's trouble in Cote d'Ivoire, they can very easily just pour in because there's no control on that border.
And Chika, what do we know about the president-elect? Is he able, down the line, to make Cote d'Ivoire the regional powerhouse that it once was?
Well, he has the background, although right now it's going to be difficult to rebuild the country to what it was before, because as we have been saying, there is a disconnect between the North and the South. And mostly in the South you have more Christians, and in the North you have Muslims. And for him to rule effectively, he has to generate the trust of Southerners in the country. And it's going to take a great deal of time because a lot of people in the South suspect him, are very suspicious of him. And in terms of, he's going to introduce maybe Islamic laws and all those things in the South. So he has the background to make the country a very successful country, but it would take a while for him to do that.
In discussing the current situation in Cote d'Ivoire and in the context of Africa's long list of defiant dictators, analysts are now bringing to the fore the quote by former President Jacques Chirac saying that Africa is not ready for democracy. Ari, how fair is it to bring that up in the case of Cote d'Ivoire?
I don't know what Chirac had in mind. Not ready means that there are a lot of people around who won't accept it, because they can make a lot of money by being dictators. That doesn't mean that ordinary people aren't ready. I think anybody is ready for democracy because they ultimately would be better off with democracy than with a regime that threatens them.
Chika Onyeani and Dr. Aristide Zolberg, thank you very much for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned.
We hope you'll join us again next week. Till then, be independent-minded.